Hi, it's Andy. And yesterday I talked about the story of a man who was paralyzed, who was healed because of the faith of four men and the hope that inspired action. And perhaps, as I mentioned, maybe it was just the hope of one man. Again, that part of the story we don't know. I just put it in the context of what might be possible. But over the next couple of days, the next 3 days, I want to share the story of another miracle, which, like the healing of this man, required a person to act upon their faith, required them to have enough hope to act. And you can find this particular story in Mark chapter 5 and in Luke chapter 8. It is the story of the woman who had the issue of bleeding for 12 years. Now, let me just set the context of this. Jesus has asked his disciples to follow him. He has done some teaching, and then he went across the sea to heal a man. He's done a few miracles in this, and all of this fits his declaration in Mark chapter 3, verses 14 and 15, which says that he called the apostles to himself in order to teach them how to preach. Now he's taught, Mark chapter 4, and how to cast out demons, which he's done in chapter 5, all of which, I think casting out demons, we could broaden that idea to perform miracles. Certainly the apostles cast out demons, but we also know that they perform miracles, like Peter in Acts, healing the lame man there. So specifically, we see Jesus doing some miracles. We see Jesus leading some people to do this. But all of this happened in and around one location, and that location was the town of Capernaum. Now, this was a part of Jesus' ministry base. He would expand from there, and in later parts of his ministry, he wasn't there as much. But Capernaum is on the northwest side of the Sea of Galilee. And it was a place where fishermen would bring their fish to market quite often because the fish that would come out of the Sea of Galilee would be used throughout Israel and actually would be taken over towards port cities along the Mediterranean Sea. If you wanted freshwater fish, you went here. If you wanted saltwater fish, you went there. And so it was a base, and it was also a place where tax collectors could make a lot of money. One of the interesting things that I think is that Matthew was a tax collector in the area of Capernaum. Jesus calls Matthew to follow him, says, Levi, follow me. That happens in and around Capernaum. It happens after Jesus has James and John and Peter and Andrew already following him as disciples, and it is very likely that these four fishermen had encounters with Matthew as a tax collector when they brought their fish to sell in Capernaum, and probably didn't like Matthew very well. And we know that Capernaum was a place that they frequented because we know that in Mark chapter 1, towards the end of Mark chapter 1, we see that Peter's mother-in-law lived in Capernaum. So he obviously would be in Capernaum at times. So Jesus performed one of his first miracles at this place, Capernaum. He cast demons out of a man in the synagogue. That got people's attention. Later that day, still on the Sabbath, by the way, he healed Peter's mother-in-law of a fever. And then after sundown, after the Sabbath, when people could travel, when they would allow Jesus to work, the town flooded where Jesus was, very possibly in the home of Peter's mother-in-law. They wanted to be healed. And Jesus healed many. And he cast the demons out of many. But it got late, and so people went home. And so the next morning, people came looking for Jesus, still in Capernaum. And they couldn't find him. And this required Peter and the other apostles to go out and to find him. And Peter does find him. Mark 1, verse 36 and 37, he says, hey, Jesus, everybody's looking for you. Well, why don't you come back and take the accolades that you do? Take a bow or maybe heal some more people. But Jesus had been praying. And we see from John that Jesus only does what the Father in heaven tells him to do. So I think a part of what God the Father told him to do in that moment was, Jesus, it's time to leave Capernaum and continue your ministry elsewhere. And we know that that's exactly what they begin to do. So at a later point in time, after Jesus is gone and he's preached, he heals a leper, by the way, as he's leaving town, or maybe entering another town. We don't have the exact specifics. But he heals a leper, and he does some teaching, and now in Mark chapter 2, Luke chapter 5, he's back, and we have the story that I preached yesterday about healing the paralyzed man. And then after that, he does call Matthew. He dines with Matthew. And the popularity of Jesus within Capernaum is growing like wildfire. Many people that may have lost hope in the past, whatever kind of hope that they had had, whatever kind of hope that they had lost, were finding it again by listening to this man, by hearing this man, by watching this man and knowing what he does. And that sets the stage for the miracle, which we will begin to talk about tomorrow.